Chairman, we can go.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the RTA's meeting of the Board of Directors. We'll review the guidelines as we always do for our meeting. For those members who are in person, and it's most of you, thank you. It's so good to see everybody again, sort of getting back to normal. Please turn your microphones on when you wish to speak and off when you are done so that we limit the mics that are on at any one given time. I'll call on those who have questions or comments for those attending in person. For those of you who are remote, keep your audio on mute as much as possible to minimize background noise as we record these meetings. When you have a question or comment, please raise your virtual hand, which you've gotten very good at over the last year or so, and the board secretary will call on you if you've raised your virtual hand one at a time. When he calls on you, lower your hand if you can remember to do that, and unmute yourself before speaking. With that said, I will now call officially the meeting of the Board of Directors of the Regional Transportation Authority to order, and will everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. One nation. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Sure. Director Indulcio.
Here.
Director Canty. Director Carey. Director Colson. Director Fuentes. Director Gavin. Director Gorman.
Here.
Director Groven.
Here.
Director Holt. Director Cotel.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Here.
Director Melvin.
Here.
Director Pang.
Here.
Director Ross.
Here.
Director Sager. Director Sager. Director Sager indicates he is present. Chairman Dillard.
Here.
14 present, 2 absent, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your great attendance as
Joe, hi,
always.
this is Brian Sauer calling again. I still have no voice at all. I can hear what's going on there at the meeting.
Dr. Sager, we can hear you
Director Sager, can you hear?
perfectly.
Okay.
We'll have
that's what they
IT
said, but
work on
maybe
you,
I'm-
but
maybe
we
I
can
need to
hear
mute
you,
myself
Doctor.
right now.
All right. Item 3 is the approval of the minutes from the Board of Directors meeting held in September. Are there any comments or corrections to those minutes? If not, can I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Carey moves, seconded by Director Lewis, that we approve the minutes from September 15th of 2022. With that, Mr. LaMarche, Mr. Secretary, take the roll, if you would.
Director Indulcio.
Yes.
Director Canty.
Yes.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson. Yes. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Aye.
Director Cotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
14 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It's approved unanimously. Item 5, or actually item 4 is the public comments section of the meeting. Any comments received by email will now be read into the record by the board secretary. Are there any comments, or
No, Mr. Chairman, we've received no comments at this time.
does anybody from the audience wish to testify? Seeing none, we'll move on then. Thank you to item 5, which is the executive director's report. Leanne Redden.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's good to see even more real faces here again this month. That's exciting. So just to start off on my report today, I just want to highlight a couple of things that I have participated in since we last talked. The first one was I attended the APTA, or the American Public Transportation Association Conference, National Conference in Seattle. I was also joined by the 3 executive directors from CTA, Metra, and PACE as well. So it was a great opportunity not just to network with and hear some great presentations with fellow colleagues around the country, but also it's also a good opportunity to connect with the local people, because sometimes we don't even get to see each other that much locally. So it was really good. At that meeting, though, Dorval Carter was announced as the new chair of the association for this coming year. That is really, and APTA really provides a key role in critical advocacy for our organizations. And it's really, I think, a testament to his reputation, his experience, a recognition of his leadership. But I also think the leadership that our region as a whole is playing in the transit space. So that was very exciting news. We look forward to continuing to work with APTA and the industry leadership over the coming years. The second event I attended was an annual meeting of the CMAP board with the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So the MPO, just for clarification, I guess, is essentially the decision-making body for all regional transportation plans and programs in Northeastern Illinois. So they're broader than just the transit space. They deal with all of that. I'm actually the current, well, actually at that meeting, I turned over, I was the vice chair of that group, and I've handed that off to Sis Killen from Cook County for next year. But at that meeting, we presented with Jessica Hector-Sue, our Director of Planning. I brought the group up to speed on the developments and the work we've been doing on the strategic plan. And after our presentation on the extensive engagement and outcomes that we have gathered so far, we were pleased to have all 3 service boards, as well as the City of Chicago and the Collier counties, all voice their support for both the process and the extensive outreach and engagement that we have had ongoing, basically since spring and through summer. And they also endorsed sort of some of the outcomes that we've got so far, which is the advocacy and action list that we have been sharing with you as well. So that was some good feedback from them. CMAP also presented their mobility recovery work and talked about the transit report that it will develop for the General Assembly next year, due January 24, in which they will incorporate some of the advocacy and action items that we have already identified and sort of build from that work. And we continue to look forward to collaborating and working with CMAP and all the stakeholders in that work as well, that'll culminate in that report to the General Assembly in early 24. So next slide, please. So I want to focus a little bit on the regional budget and what you can expect over the coming couple of months. The slide here shows a couple of the key milestones coming from both the budget as well as for the strategic plan. And the highlights, just to flag a few things in here for you. November 17 meeting will feature the service boards here presenting to you the details of their 2023 budgets. Had to stop and think what year it was. Then we will also, a draft strategic plan will be released for public comment the week of December 5. And then we'll have a virtual public hearing on December 7. And that's an opportunity for people to engage in both the budget and give us feedback and comments on both budget work as well as the strategic plan work. The budget vote at the December meeting is when we'll be asking you to take a vote on the budget at that December 15th meeting. The strategic plan vote is targeted for February 2023. So in keeping with the focus on the stakeholder engagement and our changes to sort of we've made some changes to the public hearing that we are going to run. So it still will be virtual. Virtual provides us actually, I think, and the public and many stakeholders, much better opportunities to engage with us. But we're inviting our working group members as well as other stakeholders that we've engaged with over this past year to those meetings, as well as the public at large. We will be making presentations on both the budget work as well as the strategic plan. We are really looking to continue that engagement and sort of way of interacting that we've been able to leverage through the strategic plan work, and hopefully get a bit more engagement even in some of our budget conversations as well. So we want to provide opportunities for visitors to learn about the issues raised during both the presentation on the budget, but we're also going to set up some breakout rooms, if you will, and have staff, expert staff in those rooms. So if someone wanted to do a deeper dive and actually have more of a conversation about things beyond sort of the formality of providing public testimony, they can pop into one of those breakout rooms and give us feedback on both budget, strategic plan. We will also have a couple of, probably a couple of others available for other key agency projects and activities that we're engaged with. While still providing, just to stress this, the traditional public comment listening session that we are required to provide. So the goal, I think, really is to make sure that we adhere to all the requirements of traditional public hearings, but while also offering, as I said, sort of a more engaging and interactive experience for people that are choosing to come and speak with us. So look forward to that, and hopefully some or all of you could pop in or join us for part of that. There'll be more information coming from Joey in the coming weeks. So next slide, please. In addition to the virtual public hearing, we will also visit 6 counties for presentations on both the strategic plan as well as the regional budget. They are going to be a combination of either virtual or in person. That's based on what the counties themselves wanted us to do. The in-person meetings we have continued, we have coordinated with each of those counties to hold an in-person meeting and have them allocating us some space at the end of that meeting where we'll make the formal presentation to be available for members of that meeting or the public to join us and also provide any feedback or comments as well. We're going to advertise and promote all of these opportunities through all of our channels, digital and otherwise, to try to make sure the word gets out about these opportunities. And we really see this as another chance and opportunity to engage with the public and be present within the communities that we serve. So next slide, please. So just a quick snapshot of today's agenda. We will include an update on the strategic plan as well as a report on the monthly financials. We will move toward a vote on the plan and its implementation. And we're also wanting to sort of highlight how we have widened the audience of who we've reached out to, how we're talking about people, and how we're trying to make sure we're clarifying sort of the message as to what transit is facing in the coming years. And there'll be a presentation from Tina on some of that. We are looking to, our agency really has evolved in the last couple of years. I would argue it was evolving and going through some rapid changes pre-COVID, but it has continued to change. And I think when we think about how stakeholders and or the public look at us and sort of see what we do, sometimes the way we present ourselves visually, digitally, hasn't always caught up to the way we're trying to be a little more proactive, engaging, etc. So we want to make sure, so we're going to be sharing with you an update on our communication activities that are really going to set the stage for the implementation of the strategic plan and our further advocacy and education work that we are now planning. After those informational items, you will be asked to vote on several contracts. And then finally, we will spend a few moments acknowledging the significant contributions of B. Raina Hickey, who, I can't believe it, who is retiring and has only 1 week left with us here at RTA. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Leanne. Any questions for Leanne? Yes, Dr. Lewis.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask Leanne, I've heard really positive comments about the South Cook County Fair Transit Program and didn't know if we have any plans to maybe illuminate some of the statistics about the success of that program, because I've heard a lot of just positive public comment about that initiative, and I know we've extended it, but I just didn't know if you had planned in future presentations to provide any additional data.
I could suggest we can do two things. We could send you, all board members, a sort of a short summary on where that is at. We can also look to make a presentation in the future. And I can say that we are continuing to be engaged in that work. It actually has moved into sort of a new phase or an additional phase. And there was a kickoff kind of meeting just yesterday with all four transit agencies, if you include us, Cook County and CMAP at that, to talk about what the next steps might be. So we can provide you more detail on that.
Great, thank you. And Michael, just for your information, Director Gorman and I were just down in Harvey for the second time the day before yesterday. So that it is something we ought to illuminate because we're doing great work down there, which is great. Item 6A is an update on the strategic plan focusing on public feedback and technical working groups. And we have Jessica Hector Sue, Anthony Foley, Doug Anderson, and Brian Lowenberg, who will update us and present the report.
Good morning, Chairman. Thank you. I'm back again with another update on the strategic plan today. On the next slide, recall that we're developing the plan on 3 tracks. You've seen this slide now many times. We are still slated to have a draft plan, as Leanne just mentioned, ready in early December. So in the last few weeks since we met in September, we have wrapped up 3 major pieces of our work. And I have with me 3 other members of the team who are going to each go through several slides to tell you more about those things. I'll hand it off. I'm going to explain how it's going to work. It's a little longer than the last few have been. So I'll hand it off to Anthony first, and he's going to talk about feedback that we've gotten on the action and advocacy list. And then I'm going to hand it off to Doug Anderson, who will give you an update on the 10-year financial plan technical group and what they did. And then he's going to hand it off to Brian Lowenberg, who's going to tell you more about the priority project working group. This is a little bit longer than our last few have been, but bear with us. It's good information. It's some stuff that we wanted you to know because it's really forming the basis of the plan that's going to come out in a couple of months. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Anthony, and he's going to go ahead and get us started.
Good morning. My name is Anthony Safali. I'm in the Government Affairs group here at the RTA. I just started in April, so it's good to meet all of you. Next slide, please. Gonna go, and you can go one forward as well. Gonna go through some of what we heard from stakeholders on the agenda for advocacy and action. Just want you to recall that the agenda includes 14 items in 2 categories. That's advocacy and action. All of the ideas come directly from the goals and strategies developed during the strategic planning process over the summer. So you can go to the next slide, please. After conclusion of the working groups over the summer and the release of the advocacy and action list, we began conversations to hear what communities thought about the list and the next steps for the transit system. This kind of outreach and engagement was very new as part of the RTA strategic planning effort, and the conversations emphasized the importance of transit in the region. Outreach included over 50 separate stakeholder meetings with other units of government, business leaders, labor groups, transit advocates, and riders. There's a survey that garnered more than 750 responses, which included riders of CTA, Metra, and PACE, and the survey is still open. The RTA appeared at public events throughout the region and spoke to dozens of riders about why transit mattered to them, in addition to our constant promotion through social media, the RTA blog, and regional transit update newsletter. Next slide, please. So on to the lists. Recall that the advocacy list includes longer-term substantive changes to how our regional transit system works in the context of the broader transportation system. This list largely includes changes that the RTA and the service boards need stakeholder leadership and backing to accomplish. Fundamental to this is seeking new sustainable funding for transit, but there are 6 other items on the list. So this is the full advocacy areas. Next slide, please. The survey that is currently out asks respondents to select 3 advocacy goals from the list. And what we heard from the survey were the top goals were partner with roadway agencies to build more transit-friendly streets, as well as securing increased funding for transit operations and transit infrastructure. Next slide, please. Discussion with stakeholders revealed similar support for areas of advocacy, and this list included broad recognition of the value of transit to bring our region and the need broad value to transit in our region and the need to secure additional funding, concern for the projected operating deficit in federal year 26 and the urgent need for new funds. Support for funding structure is less reliant upon fares and instead prioritizing equity. We also had a lot of enthusiasm for a transit-focused coalition to address future revenue and policy challenges and to champion specific areas of advocacy and action. Lastly, members want to remain engaged in policy and hear more from us about transit funding and policy goals. Next slide, please. Moving on to the action list. Recall that this list includes the RTA and ideas that the RTA and service boards can take the lead to implement with the support of our stakeholders. None of these things are easy to accomplish, but we think that there are steps we can take to move these forward. The list includes making the system safer and more secure and adapting to the changing need of riders, among others. Next slide, please. Like the advocacy section, the survey that is currently out asks for respondents to select 3 action items from the agenda that they believe are most urgent. The top answers were make the transit system safer and more secure, adapt bus and rail service to meet the changing need of riders, and provide real, accurate information for those on the system. Next slide, please. Our discussions revealed similar support in areas for RTA and the service boards to take action. The list includes the list reflects most pressing challenges currently facing the system. It includes support for climate goals of the plan and utilizing transit as a response to the climate crisis. The list prioritizes policy changes such as a universal fare card, as well as making transfers easier and more affordable. Additionally, people had questions about how service patterns and schedules need to change given pandemic-induced changes in travel behavior and work habits. Next slide, please. In summary, what we really sought to do here was keep the conversation around the strategic plan going and talk to as many people as possible to learn how if this list of action and advocacy items is complete, if we left out anything, if we didn't prioritize the right things, or any number of omissions. Based on the generally positive feedback we heard, we will be carrying the 14 advocacy and action items forward into the plan. The plan will frame the advocacy and action areas around 3 key questions seen here. What has been done since Invest in Transit? What can we do immediately in 2023? And what could we do in the future if we had more resources? We've been meeting with the service boards, CMAP, and internal RTA staff to develop this next step and final step of the plan. I'll pause here, but then I'm going to hand it over to Doug Anderson to update you on final conclusions from the 10-year financial plan working group.
Thanks, Anthony. Doug Anderson, Manager of Operating Budgets and Analysis here at the RTA. I led the 10-year financial plan technical working group effort over the last 6 months. Next slide, please. The members of the 10-year financial plan technical group, including finance and planning staff from the RTA, service boards, and CMAP, have been meeting since April. The group wrapped up their meetings in September and developed several deliverables that are documented in the group's technical memo. Today, I will discuss the work of the group in more detail. As you'll see, our primary recommendation is to pursue a multi-pronged solution to future budget deficits. Next slide, please. This slide, which you may have seen before, shows a range of financial scenarios that the 10-year financial plan technical group modeled. From left to right, the line graph starts with 2022 and extends across the 10-year forecast timeframe to 2031. The black horizontal axis near the top represents a balanced budget with a deficit of 0. In other words, expenses matching revenues. The bold blue line is the baseline or middle of the road scenario. As you can see, all scenarios extend below the 0 deficit axis, representing future projected budget deficits. Under the baseline scenario shown in blue, the region should expect a budget shortfall of around $730 million by 2026. The assumptions underlying that scenario are that sales tax revenues will remain strong, but ridership will remain below pre-COVID levels, resulting in insufficient revenue to cover operating expenses when federal relief funding runs out. The 2026 regional deficit of over $700 million represents almost 20% of total projected expenses. Next slide, please. Let's look more closely at some of the reasons for this impending future deficit. COVID-19 caused a profound change in the transit revenue structure. As illustrated in these pie charts, Pre-COVID actual service board operating revenues in dark orange on the left comprise 39% of total support for the operating budgets. Compare that to the post-COVID 2022 budget on the right, in which federal relief funding in green backfills the much lower service board operating revenue, which now comprises less than 17% of support. Lower fare revenue and higher public funding have introduced an asymmetry to the service board's operating budgets, which also makes the existing recovery ratio requirements impracticable. If nothing changes and no action is taken over the next 2 years, the agencies will be left with a set of difficult choices after the federal relief funding exhausts: cut expenses or increase fares. We don't think it's realistic to pursue either of those options alone to solve the budget gap. Let me tell you more about why that is the case. Next slide. Let's first take a look at operating expenses, which for public transit service include labor, fuel and power, parts and supplies, insurance, and purchase transportation services. For the 10-year projection, the service boards provided their best estimates of future operating expense growth required to support essentially status quo service levels. They considered the impact of near-term inflation on labor costs, which represent about 60% of total regional operating expenses, as well as on the costs of fuel and materials. The combined CTA, Metra, Pace Suburban Service, ADA Paratransit, and RTA expense projections resulted in an expected overall annual operating expense growth rate of 3.9% per year. As we told the board back in June, the assumed annual expense growth of 3.9% is higher than the previous decade, in which we experienced very low price inflation. The projection on the left represents our best guess at how future operating expenses will grow, reaching $3.9 billion in 2026, the midpoint of the 10-year forecast period. Throughout the strategic plan process, RTA has received consistent feedback from stakeholders and the public stating that they do not want service cuts. Addressing the operating shortfall while meeting customer needs and expectations will therefore be a significant challenge for the RTA and the service boards. Moreover, efforts to reduce operating costs may harm overall system performance. A 2019 RTA regional peer review compared the Chicago region's transit agencies to national peers and found that Chicago agencies ranked in the better half for 14 of 16 performance measures and in the top 3 for 9 of them, including low operating costs per vehicle hour. This suggests that the service boards have limited opportunity to achieve efficiency gains through cost reductions relative to our national peers. In other words, the RTA and service boards cannot cut their way out of this structural problem. Next slide, please. This chart shows the projected 2026 regional operating expenses of $3.9 billion in orange, alongside the expected revenue, resulting in the $730 million gap we are facing. The lighter blue represents the forecasted operating revenue, which is primarily fare revenue, of $781 million, similar in size to the budget gap itself. This tells us that fare revenue would have to nearly double in order to resolve the gap. And that means that the transit fares riders pay would have to double, which would require something like back-to-back years of 40% fare increases. In fact, fares would have to more than double to generate that much revenue, since customers would respond by taking fewer trips. We are in no way suggesting that the service board should do this. Such a large fare increase is clearly unrealistic and counterproductive to the ridership recovery, which the service boards are working so hard to achieve. At a certain price point, transit would become too expensive for people to use, as higher fares would disproportionately impact the lower income, transit-dependent residents of our region. Regular fare increases may have to resume sometime in the future, but the next few years seem like not the time to do that. Next slide, please. To identify potential funding solutions, our group worked with the consultant team to evaluate options to address the projected budget shortfalls, including all of the ideas put forth by the Financial Responsibility Stakeholder Working Group. This led to a set of revenue recommendations as well as policy changes that could enhance farebox revenue by increasing ridership. The consultant team reviewed the findings with the RTA finance staff and prepared a set of 26 funding proposals, organized into 6 categories. Those 26 options were evaluated and scored by the working group using 5 criteria. The 10 funding options that received the highest scores are shown by category on this slide. They are not ranked or prioritized. A detailed discussion of the analysis and evaluation of the revenue options is presented in the appendix of the 10-year financial plan technical memo. Next slide, please. This slide shows the estimated revenue yield for the funding options with those top 10 of the top 10 funding options. The essential takeaway from this chart is that the analysis concluded that no single funding option is estimated to generate sufficient revenue to stave off the projected 2026 budget gap. And that's for the existing transit system, let alone the higher gap which would result from any major improvements or expansions of the system. For example, the tallest bar, which represents increasing the RTA sales tax by 0.25%, is estimated to yield between $300 million and $400 million per year. That would address only half of the projected 2026 budget shortfall of $730 million. Next slide, please. This chart shows more detail on the criteria considered by the consultant team in the evaluation, with the top 10 funding options across the top. The criteria included stability, nexus with transit, equitable outcomes, ease of administrative implementation, and projected timeline of implementation. The results of this analysis will help inform our next steps. Next slide, please. Based on these analyses, the RTA will need to explore how to achieve higher revenue yields for these funding options and/or develop a multi-pronged approach to funding solutions, while also considering equity and other factors. To fully close the financial gap and position the system for future improvements, the RTA might also need to pursue dedicated federal assistance for transit operations. Federal formula funding for transit capital projects is currently available to urbanized areas with populations greater than 200,000. However, with the exception of COVID-19 relief funding, federal operating assistance for urban areas has been greatly limited. Nevertheless, there is precedent for direct federal operating assistance up through the early 1980s. Federal operating subsidies were provided to transit agencies as a match for state and local funding, up to a ratio of $1 of federal spending for every $2.25 of state and local spending. To address this need for federal operating support, the 10-year financial plan working group discussed opportunities for increased federal funding, such as direct operating assistance via a state and local operating funding match, or financial assistance for federally mandated ADA paratransit operations. Next slide, please. The 10-year financial plan working group also recommends the elimination of the current system-generated revenue recovery ratio requirements, 50% for mainline service and 10% for ADA paratransit service. Instead, the fair revenue recovery ratio should continue to be monitored as a performance measure within the RTA and Service Board performance measurement initiatives. The existing balanced budget requirement of the RTA Act would remain as the primary constraint on Service Board operating expense growth. The fair revenue recovery ratio is utilized in the National Transit Database-based reports produced by the RTA's Performance Measurement Group. On this slide, we can see that the RTA region had the 3rd highest fair revenue recovery ratio among major systems in the pre-COVID environment. An informal review of transit systems nationwide revealed few recovery ratio policies similar to the RTA's statutory requirement. The 2 systems with formal state requirements, Maryland and Denver, had their 35% recovery ratio requirements repealed in 2017 and 2021, respectively. One important thing to keep in mind is that elimination or reduction of the recovery ratio requirement will do nothing to solve the budget gap I covered earlier. Rather, it is an important step to adjust our budgeting process to the structural change in revenue that the pandemic has brought on. Next slide, please. In summary, the 10-year financial plan technical working group, in collaboration with our consultant partners, determined that a large shortfall will materialize in the regional operating budget as federal COVID relief funding exhausts. While the size of the future budget gap will evolve as the recovery continues, the order of magnitude is not expected to change, and no single new funding source is estimated to be sufficient to re-achieve balance. Therefore, the RTA should pursue a multi-pronged approach or bundle of new funding options. Future service improvements or expansions would require even more trade-offs or funding solutions. The RTA region is not alone with this challenge. The Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, and Los Angeles systems have also projected future gaps in the hundreds of millions of dollars, equating to approximately 20% of their operating expenses, while New York's MTA projects a gap of more than $2 billion by 2024. The RTA has heard from the public and from stakeholders during the strategic plan process that scaling back and cutting transit service is not acceptable, and that pursuing additional funds to continue and enhance transit should be a focus. Guided by the strategic plan, steps need to be taken in 2023 to move us toward new funding sources. I'll pause for any questions you may have on the 10-year plan group's work before turning things over to Brian Lowenberg.
Questions? Director Carey.
First of all, the amount of work that went into this and the detail that's available in the memo, and I haven't worked through the appendices, is tremendous, and I congratulate the group. My question is about the 10 proposed avenues to take to increase funding. Should we expect that those 10 will be presented in the strategic plan in no prioritized fashion? And the reason I'm asking is we have limited time, and I'm thinking from a position of urgency in terms of whatever I think the shortest time frame on any of those is a couple of years. So if you present them, and then the board starts to talk about them and we spend 6 months, a year talking about them, we might not be able to move quickly enough.
I think the short answer is yes, they're not really going to be formally prioritized in the plan, but at the staff and the working level, we know that there's an impending fiscal cliff we fall off in, at the end of 2025. So we need to start working on these things immediately. There are some areas, and for example, the RTA sales tax is probably the most immediate, and as been said several times, none of them are easy, but probably the easier one that we can actually initially try to start navigating a campaign around and advocating for. So we very quickly, even early next year, will be pivoting towards identifying the ones that are the most sort of, for want of a better phrase, most opportunistic for us, or most realistic to get going in a shorter time frame, but keeping all of them on the table, but also making sure that we're remaining flexible, because some of the big things like the federal push, it's not a conversation that we're just having alone. It's happening, as Doug sort of alluded to, nationally. And so we'll be part of those conversations. So be able to, as those things ebb and flow, get traction, not traction, we'll be playing in that space, and that flexibility is part of the reason why we're not necessarily going to sort of say, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. They're kind of all in the mix, but we recognize and understand both the timing and sort of the stakes and what it's going to take to get all of those things done.
Okay, next.
Hello, Chairman and members of the board. I'm Brian Lowenberg, Manager of Capital Programs and one of the representatives on the Priority Project Technical Working Group. Today, I will share some conclusions from the group's work. The Priority Project Group started meeting in May and included experts from the RTA, service boards, and CMAP. We continue to meet throughout the summer to discuss priorities related to capital programming. The group has completed a memo detailing the work and recommendations that resulted. I'll share a high-level summary of the group's recommendations today. Next slide, please. To remind the board, the group had 3 goals that carried through the process. The goals were to incorporate the transparent prioritization process and criteria required by state legislation, to incorporate the recommended goals, strategies, and performance measures developed by the stakeholder working groups from the strategic plan and apply them to capital project selection and advancement, and to better connect capital programming to other regional planning processes and show which projects are next in the queue for the service boards to advance when funding is available. We'll detail how these goals have been addressed in the coming slides. Next slide, please. A major focus of our work was that state-funded projects needed to be evaluated based on the new criteria identified in state law. The state mandates a transparent prioritization process for capital projects receiving state funding and provides 7 evaluation themes that need to be considered when programming funds, as shown on the slide. The law and proposed themes were used as a basis for creating a new evaluation method that I'll discuss in the presentation. Next slide, please. The working group has several recommendations which can be found in the memo and that I'll share with you today. The first recommendation is to maintain the current priority project list and update it annually using existing guidelines. The priority project list was initially developed as part of Invest in Transit and has been updated and shared publicly as part of the budget process ever since. The priority project list shows the high-level priorities that the service boards intend to advance as funding becomes available and illustrates the large gap between available funding and regional need. The list has been successful as an advocacy tool, helping to secure both Rebuild Illinois and IIJA dollars. The working group discussed that the priority project list is a useful tool to communicate the needs of the region as well as these high-level priorities. Next slide, please. The second recommendation is to perform evaluations on all projects entering the 5-year capital program, expanding beyond state-funded projects based on the themes developed by the state as well as the working groups and service boards. Working together, we developed a series of metrics using existing service board practices where possible and built new ones on external examples as needed. These evaluations will replace the strategic goals and core requirements from Invest in Transit that we currently use to evaluate projects. I'll tell you more about these evaluation themes in a moment. Next slide, please. The third recommendation is to increase public engagement around capital projects, which includes increased communication, making the new evaluations public and transparent via hearings, board meetings, and the RTA websites. The recommendation also carries over to the service boards. The memo recommends that they communicate their current evaluation methods and programming methods, which are currently internal processes. Next slide, please. Here are some details around the evaluation process. Each project entering the 5-year capital program will be evaluated by all 12 themes using a total of 15 metrics. The slide details the themes that came from legislation. The next slide will show the additional themes that are added to the evaluation based on stakeholder feedback and service board comments. You can see that for each of the themes, there are 1 or 2 metrics to be used for evaluation. The memo includes details on each of the metrics and the detailed measures that will be used to quantify the evaluation. The themes that are inspired by state legislation include access to key destinations, racial equity and mobility justice, economic development, reliability improvement, capacity needs, safety, and state of good repair. Now let's turn to the service board and working group themes on the next slide, please. Here we see the stakeholder and service board themes, which include climate impact, customer experience, accessibility for people with disabilities, meeting regulatory requirements, and impact on operating cost. Again, the memo details each of the metrics and detailed measures that will be used to quantify these measures. Next slide, please. Let's review the next steps as we move forward. We will include these recommendations as part of the draft strategic plan to obtain public feedback, particularly related to the metrics and measures we've just discussed. The group will produce a guidance document by year end so that the service boards can begin to develop their 2024 to 2028 capital program using these new metrics. The service boards will then prepare their capital programs, and RTA will collect and analyze the submittals and report in the 2024 to 2028 capital program using these new metrics throughout the budgeting process. So now I'll turn it back to Jessica to wrap things up.
Right.
Next slide.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Doug. I wanted to invite all of them to join me because they're really the people who will be implementing a lot of this. They do this work that they talked about day to day, so they'll be carrying all of this forward. So all of the materials from all of those groups are on a website that people can look at if they'd like to go and see more, particularly members of the public who might be listening. This is really the last major update we have for you. That was essentially a preview of what will be in the plan. There'll be a piece about funding and about the importance of transit, a piece about the importance of infrastructure investment and what we're doing to improve that and continue that, and then a piece about the action and advocacy items that will show that we're taking action in 2023. So next time that we're talking with you about this, there should be a draft plan that's out for public comment. We will have a hearing on December 7th, as Leanne mentioned in her ED report. That will be the budget hearing, and it will be combined with the strategic plan hearing. We're going to work hard to make sure people come to that hearing and join us, and will talk with us about both of those things. So please do join us if you can. And then early next year, we'll be back to share with you comments we did hear from the public during that season and to bring the plan to you for adoption in 2023. So that concludes our presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions if you have them.
Any questions or comments? As Director Carey said, just yeoman's work. I know how much time and effort and thought process has gone into this, and really, really important for us, and can't thank all of you, all of the staff, enough for their hard work here.
Thank you.
It'll be a good work, really valuable work product. Thank you very much. Along those lines, let's move on to 6B, which is an update on the communications and advocacy strategy. She'll have her work cut out for her, along with her staff. Tina, it's all yours.
Thank you. Give me just one moment. IT is going to let me run my slides, so bear with me 1 second.
While you get those up, I will tell you your social media and what you produce on a daily basis, it's phenomenal. So thank you very, very
I really
much.
appreciate that. Hats off to our communications team. We just added a new communications associate to help us with digital strategy, so I'm glad to see that's paying off.
Make us look good and competent every day. So thank you.
Wonderful. So good morning. My name's Tina Fassett-Smith. IT, am I okay? Okay, great. I'm the Director of Communications, and I want to talk to you today about work we've been doing, as Leanne mentioned, to better align what people think of when they see and hear about the RTA with how we have evolved as an agency and what we aspire to be into the future. One reason we're doing this now is because we want to prepare for a coming year of increased communications, advocacy, and plan implementation that will require us to reach new audiences and, as you just heard in the last presentation, educate them about the funding challenges and persuade them about the value of transit and keep their attention as we do so. So, oh, wrong slide. Oh, I have a timeline in here that's, I'm sorry. I'm going to go through a timeline really quickly that isn't here. Apologies. So a couple of different key communications events were just shared with you, both by Leanne and Jessica. They include what's coming up next, which I'm going to talk to you about, which is a new website that's coming out on November 14th that will include a refreshed look for our agency. After that, we have a draft plan coming out on December 5th, the public hearing that was mentioned, a budget that will get a lot of attention and be up for adoption in December. And then the plan itself, which will come out in February as a fully printed, beautifully designed document, followed by an accompanying interactive website in the spring. But then a year of what we plan to have a big educational and awareness campaign around the challenges ahead and what our solutions are. And so one of the things that we're I'm sorry, now I realize where my timeline is. Sorry about that. So you see that there's a lot of activity coming up for the communications team and for the agency as a whole. And a foundation setting thing for this is to refresh our brand. And so why do this? A lot of successful agency organizations modernize their brand. And one of the reasons is to make themselves more accessible, to bring themselves more in line with their vision and values, and to set themselves apart potentially from others in the field that they are in. We see this a lot, and we may not think about the elements of it, But the elements of a brand, type, color, logo, they make a really big impression with people and are things that people consider as they're taking in information. And this isn't just done in the private sector. The public sector does this as well. What you see here is an identity system that was adopted by New York City in 2016. And amazingly, it was the first time that New York City had ever adopted an identity system across all of its agencies and departments. And thankfully, the task before us is not quite as complicated as this one. So what we did when we began this process was wanted to be really thoughtful about how we approached it. We worked with the design consultant. We interviewed and talked to a lot of staff about what vision we should take into thinking about the visual presentation and the communication style of the agency. We developed a vision not for the agency, but for this project, for the rebranding. That vision included the fact that the RTA identity should reflect accountability, transparency, independence, and equity. It must present an optimistic yet realistic vision for the future, rooted in pragmatism and focused on the individual writer. So one of the first considerations, of course, was our logo. And when we looked at it, we realized that it had not changed a whole lot since 1977. It had been completely static since 2013. And over time, there were some elements of it that could use to be cleaned up, color-wise, type-wise, and line-wise. And while we were looking at this, we thought really hard about color and about the fact that almost all of the transportation agencies that we work with, CTA, Metro, and PACE, but also Ventra and Divvy, are all blue, and how we might better distinguish ourselves from the other agencies through color. One of our focuses also was on what people call us, the RTA. And when you look at our logo, there is opportunity even within these letters to just clean up and modernize. So that is one of the steps that we took as well. So this is our new logo. You will see that we've lost the shield and we've taken some elements that are really important to us, like the transit lines that used to be in the logo, and we've used them in other places. So they're not going away completely. I want to talk a little bit about color. So you'll see an extremely simplified color palette here of grays with a yellow accent. One of the things we've really taken a lot of time with in this identity system is to think about accessibility and make sure that this is a color system that allows for maximum legibility, that is going to improve the user experience by being just simpler and easier to apply across a lot of different platforms. That, however, our color palette will continue to include the colors for our fare programs that our mobility department manages, because these are larger systemic programs and we can't change these colors easily, nor do we want to. People are familiar with them. But at the same time, all of the products that come from our mobility department will also see full rebranding over the next year. I think a really, really big and important part of this, if this seems like too limited a color palette to you, one way in which we're going to really add color and excitement and joy is through imagery. One of the things that has been true about the images that we use, photography that we use, is that it's focused on vehicles. We show the service board vehicles usually, and many of our photographs use models instead of people to convey people using the transit system. So over the last 5 months, we've worked with a professional photographer and with the service boards to take thousands of photos of real transit riders using the system. We've got operators and stations and landscapes. We've got drone photography. We've really focused on showing the diversity of people and landscapes and how people actually use transit today. This is a really exciting part of this brand for us. And for those who are deeply familiar with our brand and know those transit lines, we've taken them out and we will use them in photography and in images and pieces across the deliverables that we have, public deliverables that we have, to remind people of that and invoke the transit lines through collages like this. So we've developed a system, I think that mixes shapes and type and photography to be really flexible and have people still quickly identify the RTA. Some other elements of this are a new system of iconography. These are visual cues used on our website and printed pieces that will help people guide them to the information that they're looking for. And so what might reports look like in this new system? So this is the same identity system, all of the same brand elements that I just went through applied to what could be a budget book for this year. So I'm not sure which one of these we'll go with, but this is what 3 different examples of how this branding could be used on the cover of the budget. You'll see the inside of reports cleaned up with again, much simpler colors and more photography. And some pieces that you're most used to seeing will also change: letterhead and stationery, memos and board agendas, and of course, business cards. We chose B not only because she's retiring, but because she has the longest title of anyone at the RTA.
Make sure it could fit.
Yep. So the really exciting part of this is that you'll see it really soon. In less than a month, we'll launch a new website. We've spent over a year rewriting, redesigning, and rethinking our agency website. One of the things that is true of a lot of government agencies and organizations in general is that our website was previously organized by how our agency is organized, by our departments and how what our departments do. But we discovered through analytics when we started this process that 85% of the daily visitors to our website are completely new, and they don't know how our agency is organized or what we do, and they're not finding the things that they need. So one of the things we've done here is organize the website by users. So you see region, communities, riders, and we've also made a bigger effort to focus on, you see here, regional planning, but on the top navigation, you see transit funding. We know transit funding is going to become the core of our communications over the next year, and we want to make sure that that's front and center and easy to find on our website. In addition, we're just technology-wise, this website is, I don't know why that's happening. This website is on a new platform that's mobile responsive, much easier for people with e-readers or who have visual impairments. It's a far more accessible website than the one we have right now. The last thing I want to talk about is just the strategic plan, print and web, so you know what to expect there. In February, the plan will come out in December, the plan will come out as a draft, and it will be a Word doc with minimal design, because it still is a draft and we're still taking public comment and changes could still be made. In February, you'll see a beautifully designed and print document. And from there, we see that as like the starting gun for a full press of education and advocacy campaigning, which we're beginning to put together right now, and I plan to bring back and update you on in future meetings. So that is all that I had, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Director Pink.
It's another good presentation today. Thank you very much. It's really beautiful and look forward to it. I have 2 questions. One is, will all communities be, when you're out in the community in person, will there be a virtual way to come in and get questions? And
For the county hearings that Leanne mentioned?
I think for everything when you're out there,
Right.
you know, that where people can't get out of their house easily.
We have not planned a virtual, we had not yet planned a virtual part of the in-person county experiences, but I think that there are ways that we can accommodate people who want to communicate with us who can't physically be there in person.
Because even if we're there in person at that time and not necessarily directly accepting digital, there's the public hearing, there's the other opportunities. So we'll be promoting all of it at the same time. So if they couldn't make that in-person meeting, there's other opportunities. Survey work now, the other virtual hearings and things like that. So we're making sure that we're covering both the in-person and the virtual space as well across all of our activities.
That's great. I think it's really critical because even all of us are not getting out of our houses as much as we were before, and I think people are limiting when they go into groups. So I think it's important to continue, and thank you for that. And on the responsive design on the website. I'm so glad you're doing that. I'm sure you're gonna test it on every kind of, because sometimes it doesn't work on Android, and also for people with differing abilities. You mentioned sight, but will the website read the context to the people that can't see at all?
Yeah, that's a big part of our consideration was there are standards that are pretty well-known industry best practices for making websites both not just available and able for e-readers, but for people who simply have, like me, not great eyes anymore, that can be far better and easier to expand the type and just read. But it will be accessible to e-readers, and we're going through user testing in early November to make sure that that's the case. The only other thing I wanted to add about the public comment on the draft is the new website will really give us a lot more opportunity to put interactivity into the website itself. For the draft, I only imagine that would be like a form on the strategic plan page where people could fill out comments or possibly take a 1 or 2 question survey. But in the future, the plan website, for example, could have a lot more interactivity than our current website allows, just because it's going to be on a newer, more flexible platform.
That's very good, and I look forward to seeing it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lewis.
Tina, I was curious, when we were looking at the logo and a lot of the branding, were we trying to harmonize that with some of the existing transit agencies so that we don't seem as if we're 4 independent entities when we really are interdependent? Is that a consideration?
Well, I think that is a good consideration. I think one of the things you'll see, hopefully, in the social media that we've been doing lately, and in just the direction from Leanne and the philosophy of our communications teams, is a huge focus on advocating on the behalf of the transit operators, especially during this time. I think that's one of the reasons too why you'll see these transit lines that represent all of the operators and us used throughout the branding as well.
So there was intentionality in terms of looking at the aspect of trying to bring us together under one umbrella when you created a lot of the branding and the work that went into studying that. Is that correct?
There was intentionality in making sure that we were, representing all 4 agencies through, the legacy of the logo as it had appeared before. Absolutely.
Have they independently been doing their own work on their own brands and logos?
I will say that the one agency that I think has been doing a lot in this area is Metra. Their My Metra campaign is one that was really inspiring, I think, to me when I looked at this. And the others, actually, all of them, I think, recently launched new websites, but that's the limit of my knowledge about what they're doing as far as their branding right now.
My final question is, there's a lot of good work that has been spoken to in terms of the strategic plan. Are we being proactive with the media? Because a lot of times the good work doesn't get out. And people give us lots of criticism, but they don't give us lots of praise. And so this is praiseworthy work. So what are some of our steps in terms of getting to like the broadcast media to make sure that the public knows?
I'm so glad that you asked that. Right now, part of the education and advocacy campaign planning that we're doing is working with a public relations firm to help provide capacity around media relations. It is something, our communications team has 2 former reporters on it. We're a media savvy group. However, with this type of the amount of folks that we need to reach with the messages that we'll have in 2023, it's going to require a little bit more capacity for us. So we are working with a public relations firm to make sure that we're reaching everyone that we need to, including national media, because as Leanne and Doug mentioned, this is a national issue, not just one for our region, and that we're doing that in as clear and efficient way as we can.
Dr. Andolcio.
Thank you again. Great branding strategy. When you say interactive, would you be providing links to Metro, Pace, and CTA for their schedules or any incidents, rail or traffic incidents?
So our website already has a travel planner that includes their schedules and does that. But we will continue to, I mean, one of the things that we were really surprised to find when we did the analytics for our website was that users come to our website to learn about how the system connects to each other, right? They come to learn about where the connections are between Metra and PACE and Metra and CTA. And so it's one of the reasons that we've made the rider section much more focused on how to use the system. Kind of an explainer for someone who might not know how to pay for it and how to use it. And so they will link, as they do now, to the other agencies. As far as disruptions of service, those are all ones that are mostly communicated via social media by the service boards, and that a little bit more difficult to kind of continuously populate our website since they are so minute by minute.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tina.
I have one more question.
Look forward
Mr.
to.
Chairman, I have one
Yeah,
more question.
yes.
Are you,
sure.
oh, sorry, B. Are you going to think about some of your testing and get regular riders or people that aren't riders, maybe the directors, as people from each of the service boards, just to look through and see things that either could come later or that they think is confusing or?
So I want to make sure I understand your question. You're saying in user testing, you're talking about service board staff or?
At some time, I don't know, there might be directors that would like to go through the website and.
Oh,
see.
sure, yeah.
And I'm sure the service, somebody want to do that too, you know?
Yeah, well, we're actually, just yesterday with our web consultant, we went through the demographics that we want to make sure we cover when we do user testing. So we went through age and ability levels that we wanted to, as we plan for user testing. But I meet with the other communications teams at the service boards regularly and plan to walk them through the website and certainly make that available to them. And we're happy to make the test, what's called the development site, available to you before it launches so that you can look through it as well.
I found that to be very helpful.
Oh, yeah,
Because
yeah, absolutely.
seeing it static and hearing a walkthrough is different than when you're trying to find things yourself and
Right.
fooling around.
One of the things that we're most excited about with this website is that we can control it and update it completely in-house. So my entire communications team is trained on the back end, the platform of it. It's a really flexible platform, and we don't need to bug IT or even go out to outside developers to make changes. It's a, kind of what you see is what you get editor that even a non-web developer can manage. So that means we can be really real-time, make changes in real time as we get feedback.
That's perfect. Great advance.
It's excellent. Thank you, Tina. We will, B can come up, but I'm going to save B for a couple of minutes. So I want to skip ahead to the action items, which are items 7A, B, C, and D. And I think we can take all of these in one roll call. Item 7A is an ordinance authorizing a contract for administrative support services for the RTA Transit Benefit Fare Program. And Jill Leary is here if there's questions on that. 7B is an ordinance authorizing a contract for the purchase of office technology products and related services. And I know Jerry is here if there are questions on it. 7C is an ordinance approving the continuing employment contract, and it's essentially the same contract for our executive director. And Nadine and Allison are here if there are questions on it. And item 7D is the approval of travel expense reimbursements. Any questions? If not, how about a motion and a second? Director Andalcio moves we approve 7A, B, C, and D, seconded by Director Groven. With that, Mr. LaMarche, will you call the roll, please?
Yep. Director Andalcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Aye.
Director Kotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sagar,
Yes.
Chairman Dillon.
Yes,
14 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. And those items in 7 are approved. Now, save the best for last.
Oh, right, right.
So, Item 6C is an update on the monthly financial results for August of '22. B, it's all yours.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This is Chief Financial Officer B. Raina Hickey. Today, for informational purposes only, I will be presenting the Service Board financial results through August, followed by our focus topic of the month, RTA funding allocations. The Service Board's year-to-date operating deficit results continue to be significantly favorable to the amended 2022 budget adopted in May. Each Service Board's operating expenses were under budget, and with the exception of ADA paratransit, each Service Board's operating revenue was above budget, resulting in a more favorable operating deficit variances showing here. Next slide, please. Our other routine update is the status of federal relief funding. The service boards have drawn another $13 million since our update last month, and as a region, we now have consumed 42.2% of the $3.5 billion total. Relief funding is still expected to last well into the 2025 budget year. Next slide, please. Over the last couple of months, we have discussed RTA funding sources that support the regional operating budget, particularly sales tax and state funding. Today, I will present how current RTA operations funding is allocated to the transit agencies. As you heard during the strategic update, additional funding sources will be needed to support public transit operations as federal relief funding is depleted. As a refresher, there are 3 primary sources of RTA operations funding. The RTA sales tax, which is the revised 2022 budget accounts for $1.5 billion. A City of Chicago real estate transfer tax, or RET, which accounts for $75 million in the budget, and the State Public Transportation Fund, or PTF, which provides a 30% match of the sales tax and RET and accounts for $477 million. Sales tax 1 and PTF 1 date back to 1983. Sales tax 2, the RET, and the Public Transportation Fund 2 were part of the 2008 funding and reform legislation. This slide displays the rates of those taxes and the match percents for the PTF. In the revised 2022 budget, these sources account for more than 90% of the RTA public funding for operations, but only 60% of the regional operating expenses. Service Board revenue and federal relief funding cover most of the remaining 40% of the regional operating expenses. Next slide, please. The RTA Act prescribes the distribution of approximately 3/4 of all RTA operations funding, including 85% of the sales tax 1 and all of the sales tax 2 and the RET and the PTF 2. We refer to this as statutory funding, meaning statutorily allocated. 85% of the sales tax 1 is allocated to the service boards based on where the sales transactions occur. I'll talk about the remaining 50% of sales tax 1 in a minute. All of the sales tax 2, PTF 2, and the RET are statutorily distributed. Sales tax 2 first funds several special uses: the IDA Paratransit Fund, the PACE Suburban Community Mobility Fund, or SCMF, and the Innovation, Coordination, and Enhancement, or ICE funding. The remaining sales tax 2 is distributed to CTA Metro PACE in the following proportions: 48%, 39%, and 13% respectively. The CTA receives all of the real estate transfer tax directly from the City of Chicago, as well as the 25% match on the RET from the Public Transportation Fund 2. The remainder of the PTF 2 is distributed to CTA Metro and PACE in the same proportions as sales tax, 48, 39, and 13%. Next slide, please. The RTA board determines the remaining 15% of sales tax 1. Remember, this is what all the fighting was about. And of the PTF are distributed. We refer to this as non-statutory funding, meaning non-statutorily allocated. During the 2015 budget negotiations, a collaborative effort by the CFOs of the RTA, CTA, Metro, and PACE resulted in what has become known as the 2015 Funding Framework, or Peace Agreement, I would call it. Following the framework, the RTA uses the non-statutory 15% of sales tax 1 funding for the following: debt service on the non-skip RTA bonds, which funds service board capital projects, RTA agency operations, joint self-insurance fund, or JSIF premiums, and the PACE South Suburban Job Access Fund. All residual sales tax 1 is distributed to CTA, Metro, and PACE in the proportions of 48, 39, and 13 respectively. While those percentages may sound familiar from the previous slide, that is not an indication that the distribution is statutorily mandated. The funding framework also includes a prior practice of distributing 98% of PTF1 to CTA and 2% to PACE. Since 2015, the RTA board has adopted funding allocations and budgets that reflect this funding framework. Again, non-statutory funding, no matter how traditional or based on past practice, is not statutorily mandated, but rather is allocated by the RTA board. Next slide, please. This table illustrates the resulting statutory and non-statutory allocations of RTA operating funds within the revised 2022 budget. Some takeaways include the following: ADA paratransit is statutorily fully funded as required by the RTA Act. CTA, Metro, and PACE each receive a combination of statutory and non-statutory funding. Statutory funding of $1.5 billion accounts for more than 3/4 of the RTA funding. Of the nearly $2 billion shown here, funding for the RTA agency budget totals only $35.2 million. That's less than 2% of the total funding. Finally, as you heard earlier this morning, significantly more public funding will be necessary to fund the the regional transit operations as federal relief funding begins to run out in 2025. That concludes my presentation. In close, we are making exceptional progress on our tour focus areas. As you can expect, new topics will be introduced by Doug and Bill at the next board meetings, including the budget adoption criteria. This concludes my final presentation, Mr. Chairman. It has really been an honor and a privilege to work with all of you. This is a great board. It's very collaborative. It's very different from the board some time ago. No offense to any of our former members. It's really been great. After working 28 years at the city of Chicago under 4 mayors, if you count the one that was a mayor for like a week, without naming any names, I didn't think I'd find another great family, and I have certainly found that here. It's really great. I've gotten to know so many of you, and I love working with our senior staff and our great RTA staff. So, kind of mixed emotions.
Thank you, B.
Thank you all.
It's funny, on the way in, somebody asked me today, well, what 4 or 5 people are we going to find to replace B? So at this point, I just want to congratulate you and recognize you on your much-deserved retirement after a career of incredibly dedicated public service. B has been our RTA Senior Deputy Executive Director for Finance, Innovation, Technology, and the CFO for the past 10 years. As Tina pointed out, you do have a long title because you're so invaluable. Prior to joining the RTA, B worked for the city of Chicago in numerous big-time capacities, including the director of the Department of Revenue, the head of administration at the Department of Aviation, which is a gigantic job, and also ran personnel and administrative services at the Department of Housing. Your experience and your assets to the RTA are just so invaluable, and your service here over the past decade has just been remarkable. You are the conductor, no pun intended, of the service board negotiations year after year with their finance teams, and to be able to facilitate the agreements and the compromises, and you produce the balanced budgets each year for the region, takes an incredible amount of talent, B. While no one is irreplaceable in this world, you're as close to that as we can find. I just think, having watched and had a career in government, you are among a handful of the finest, most talented people I've ever had the privilege of working with. You're smart. You got a great sense of humor. You're tough. And boy, in the regional transportation field, it's not easy, as we all know, to work with the three different service boards. And you are so respected and sometimes feared by the service boards. It's a very healthy mix. And you're just plain amazing. So I thank you. I have to leave, as B knows. I've talked to her for another emergency unplanned meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to Director Ross to take any comments about B from any of the other board members that are here, and JD can adjourn you. But B, you and I will have a lunch, and you're not far away. We're going to still depend upon you, whether you're on our payroll or not.
Anytime.
Thank you so.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
JD, it's all yours.
Comments from other directors?
Please.
Director Pang?
B, I feel like I've known you for
Forever.
100 years, and you were the glue at City Hall, and you were a big part of the glue in this region. You have incredible chops in finance and innovation and all the other things that you do, and you are outstanding in your communications to your peers in the RTA, but also CTA, Metra, and PACE, and to us. You are also incredible with in the communities. You say the same things, but you adjust it to the audience, which is a very hard thing for many people, particularly finance people, no offense. B, you are strategic, always aligning finances and innovation to underpin the RTA's strategy and goals. You are an incredible, the best of civil servants. And I know that from here and from Mayor Daley's office administration, which was not an easy place, you
Yeah.
know, not an easy, it was fun, but it was not easy. And B, I just want to thank you also for building an incredible team that you will leave here and serve the region for many, many decades to go. You really are something, and I will see you on Halloween for lunch at the Gauge, so we can talk more. And
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It was always great working with you as well. We could always reach out to you at City Hall. You were always so approachable. It was wonderful.
I probably learned it from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our senior director, Director Colson.
By a couple of months over you, I think. Yeah, B, I think too often in government, it has become something of an art form to misdirect, maybe mislead is too strong, but with numbers and with statistics. And one of your many skills that I appreciated was your ability to cut through all of that when it was attempted and get to the core of a budget and tell us like it is, whether it's good news or bad news. You really got to the bottom line. And that's a skill that is priceless. And I would ask one thing of you, and that's please teach your successor those skills, how to cut through a budget and give us the bottom line, because we can't, we look at these budgets and my eyes glaze over. We needed somebody like you to tell us what the bottom line is. So that is one of your many contributions. And I personally will miss you. I need somebody to call when I have an issue on the budget. So please teach your
You've got a
successor.
great team here.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
You've got a great
But
team.
thank you, and we'll miss
I
you.
wouldn't have been able to do it without him. I had to learn everything here, you know. Bill and Doug are just fantastic.
Comments from other directors? Director Lewis?
Thank you. So B, I was just thinking about this. I joined the RTA board about the time you did. I joined in 2013, and that's about the time.
2012.
Yeah. So you're really the only finance director that I've known. And I have to say, one of the skills of your many skills that I admired is that, you took a newbie or a neophyte, and everybody comes on at some point and they're new, and you have great patience in terms of explaining the same thing over and over and over and over again, because you know that we don't know. This is a complicated matter. And I'm a recovering banker, so I've looked at a lot of financial statements, but the interpretation and basically being able to use the information in a usable way was really a function of your good guidance, your patience, your dedication. And so I wanted to say personally, I appreciate all that you've done for me. I appreciate all that you've done for this organization. And really, you know, the things that you've done will benefit not only people in this organization, but the riders and the general population in Northeast Illinois for years to come. So thank you so much. I wish you every success as you go to the next phase. You know, I know you're going to enjoy it as much as you've enjoyed everything that you've done, but I just want to thank you for all that you've done for me personally and for us collectively.
Thank you so much, Director Lewis.
Any other director? Director Gorman.
Thank you. B, you know, we worked across City Hall and Cook County Hall of Government, and you were definitely a person to be reckoned with and to work with, and you were just that. But it was great to reconnect here, you know, at the RTA, and it's a shame it wasn't a little bit longer. You know, I was really looking forward to working with you, but I'm sure that you will not be gone. You'll just be a phone call away, and we appreciate that. But I just want to congratulate you on your exceptional service, your incredible career in government, and thank you so much for your service.
Thank you very much.
Director Ross, Director Sager has a raised hand.
Director Sager.
Yes, thank you. B, I wanted to say it has been a real, true honor to be able to work with somebody of your degree of knowledge, but also your professionalism. And I am incredibly grateful for the legacy that you have left behind. That legacy, I think, is really strongly twofold. Number one, you have provided an exceptional example of a true public servant who is knowledgeable and extremely competent. And you have provided the leadership for not just your staff, but truly for this board of directors. So I'm incredibly grateful for that legacy. But the other side of legacy to me is what is left to move us forward in a positive professional direction. And I think you've built an incredible team. And one of the things that has meant so much to me as a member of the board has been the ability to trust. I have huge amounts of respect and huge amount of trust for you individually, but also for the team that you have amassed. And so I want to congratulate you. I want to commend you on an exceptional professional appearance, and also want to wish you the very best of everything in the future. You are most deserving.
Thank you so much, Director Sager.
Any other comments?
And Director Canty has a raised hand as well.
Director Canty?
Thank you. B, I am so sorry that I couldn't be there in person today, the mom duties call, but I just want to echo what the other directors have said about your ability to take financial statements, take financial budgets, take financial matters in general, and put them out in a way that everyone can understand, even those of us without a financial background, and then building up and empowering your team to do the same thing. So I know that whoever steps into your shoes has huge shoes to fill, but I know that your team will be right there with them to help show them kind of the B way of doing things. So much success wished upon you, and I hope we meet again in the future.
Thank you, Director Canty, but not big shoes to fill. I'm a 6.5.
Anyone else?
I think it's all been said. And your traits are well recognized and admired. For me, it's the trust, it's your patience, your professionalism, and your kindness. Because I could always rely upon calling you, knowing we're going to have a good conversation, honest, patient, and you're going to be decent about it. So thank you very much. We're going to miss you. Good luck.
Thank you, Director Melvin.
And B, I would like to thank you for your service also. When you alluded earlier to the wars that used to go on, you helped to resolve those wars, and you did so by speaking with integrity, with facts, and with a sense of humility, and that if you didn't have the answer at hand, you would tell us that you would get back to us and you would do it. So when I think about my tenure on this board, there's never been a finer person to occupy your chair than you. You gave us all confidence that we were making the right decisions based on good information. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I call them the times of troubles. But you know what? It couldn't be in a better place. And under Leanne's leadership, I mean, and under the chairman, I mean, the dynamics totally changed. And I think we're in a really good place. I mean, we're working better together than ever. There's a lot of collaboration. As you know, we've passed funding marks ahead of schedule, other than recently we passed them, you know, as required in September, just to allow for more sales tax information. But yeah, it's really in a good place. And the strategic plan, I've never seen it more. I mean, it's a lot of work, of course, but more stakeholders involved and so much outreach, you know. Our banking situation is very good. We continue to really invest in our communities and, you know, keep taxpayers' dollars working for the people that are generating them, that kind of thinking. As you know, that was huge at City Hall. So I think we're in a really good place, and I think we've got a great team, both my internal staff as well as the senior staff. So I think it's been great. And I want to thank all of you for your help when some of those negotiations got a little tough. Thank you. And thank you over there. But it's been a good run. You know, I didn't think I'd last here 10 years after the first year, quite frankly, but it's been great.
Leanne, I think you'd like to say a few words to B.
I just want to, well, I'll thank B. I think almost everything has been said, and without sort of belaboring all the points, she has been an invaluable member of our team. We will miss her both personally and professionally. B was always in those moments of tension, could cut through it and just create something to actually make us smile, laugh, or even appreciate maybe the challenges, but sometimes the folly of the situation too. And that's going to be part of the big shoes to fill as well. We appreciate her support, her input. I'm glad she lasted 10 years. It made my life a lot easier. And yes, you're right. The team that she has built around her and empowered them is really critical, I think, to our successes now and hopefully in the future. I will just say this is not the end of the celebrations with B. We are going to continue at the staff level to celebrate with B. And if anybody actually knows B outside of work, she also likes to celebrate. Let's just put it at that. But I would invite you, we do have cake. It's always good to have cake. So once we adjourn this meeting, we do have cake available. If you do have a few moments and could join us, we would ask you to join us and continue the conversations with B. At the staff level, we have a bigger send-off planned for next week. So to formally say goodbye to her as well. But thank you, B.
Thank you, Leanne.
There is no additional business to come before the board. I'll remind you that our next meeting is November 17th at 9 a.m. How about a motion to adjourn? A second?